Last time that we were talking about revolution in China, we talked about how Mao Zedong had defeated Chiang Kai-shek, and now Mao Zedong was in control of China. And when Mao Zedong was in control of China, he tried to do a couple different things. He tried to advance the nation with his 5-year plans, his first 5-year plan about making iron in backyard furnaces, and then his second 5-year plan, which was about increasing agricultural production in China. Both did fail. Let's talk about some foreign relations before we talk about what Mao Zedong does as a response to his failures and people starting to think that maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. Let's go ahead and make a bullet. And we're going to write down foreign relations. So bullet, foreign relations. So what ends up happening in foreign relation wise is with China, during the Korean War, China is involved in the Korean War. We'll talk more about that tomorrow, about the Korean War. They do get involved in Vietnam as well, giving money and weapons to the North Vietnamese so they can fight against South Vietnam. They also, with the Soviet Union, they do start kind of cutting ties with the Soviet Union, Russia, in the 1960s. So they do start kind of cutting ties with them as well. Go ahead, make a one. And for number one, we're going to write down Tibet seized in 1962. So Tibet is out to the southwest part of China. So it's out to the southwest part of China. And it falls under the control of the communists in 1962. Let me show you where Tibet is. So you kind of see here on this map, Tibet is down in this area right here. So in 1962, this red area would cover all this area here. Well, not that. It would cover all this area here, not including Taiwan. So they want to have control of Taiwan because that's the Republic of China. That's at Chiang Kai-shek's territory. But they control this area here. And they invade in 1962 over to Tibet, and they end up taking this over this territory here. Tibet, their leader for Tibet is the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is basically a religious figure, religious head of the country of Tibet. The Dalai Lama is for the religion of Buddhism. All right, so if you ever see Dalai Lama, kind of dresses in orange. I will show you guys a picture while I'm thinking of it. So Dalai Lama. I don't think I spelled it exactly right, but that's okay. So Dalai Lama, I'm going to show you kind of what he looks like. So that's the Dalai Lama. So you kind of see what he looks like there. So he's a guy that was in charge of Tibet, gets kicked out. He's kind of that kind of religious head for Buddhism in that area of Tibet, but ends up getting kicked out because the Chinese take it over. Other things that go on as well in this time period is they do end up developing a nuclear weapon. Going to make it 2. 5th overall and first non-European country to develop a nuclear weapon. So 2, 5th overall and first non-European country to develop nuclear weapons. So they end up developing nuclear weapons in 1964. So in order of our nations to develop nuclear weapons, the United States is the first nation to develop nuclear weapons. The Soviet Union is the second one. Britain is 3rd, France is 4th, and then China is the 5th nation to develop a nuclear weapon. All right, so that's kind of the order of nations that develop nuclear weapons. They also gain a seat as well on the United Nations Security Council. So the United Nations is when all the nations of the world come together and they discuss things. If you're part of the Security Council, which there are 5 nations on the Security Council, if you're one of those 5 nations in the Security Council, you can veto any resolution of law that the other nations want to pass. So if all the other nations are like, hey, we want to give everybody a teddy bear, and if you're one of those 5 permanent members in the Security Council, you can be like, no, veto, and that means the law doesn't pass. So a member of the Security Council can veto the resolutions passed in the United Nations. There's 5 permanent members of the Security Council. That's the United States, France, Britain, Russia, and China. Those are the 5 nations that are on the Security Council. And the Taiwan, they're the ones that are on the Security Council. That's until 1971, in which China is allowed to become the 5th member of the Security Council. Why were they allowed to become the 5th member of the Security Council, even though the Chinese were communists? The United States doesn't like the communists. That's because the United States was trying to work with China because we didn't like the Soviet Union. And since China had cut off ties with the Soviet Union, we decided to work with the Chinese. So that way, if there ever was a war between us and the Soviet Union, China wouldn't get involved. So that's what we were going for. That was the play the United States made, and that's why we made them a part of the United Nations Security Council and had them replace Taiwan. Let's make it 3. 1972, United States President Richard Nixon opened diplomatic relations with China. So 3, 1972, United States President Richard Nixon opened diplomatic relations with China. So the United States, as I said, was getting China, kind of getting China not to be involved with the Soviet Union. So now we got to talk about, well, now that people were starting to get worried about Mao Zedong. So remember, Mao Zedong had his first 5-year plan, second 5-year plan, both were failures. And during the second 5-year plan, there was at least 14 million people that end up starving to death. So now that people aren't really thinking that Mao Zedong knows exactly what he's doing, we have to talk about, well, what does Mao Zedong do in response to the fact that people don't think he knows what he's doing? Let's make a bullet and write down Mao's Little Red Book. So bullet, Mao's Little Red Book. So Mao's Little Red Book is just this little red book that was produced in China that had a whole bunch of quotes in it. It also talks about a lot about the just ideas of communism and what the ideas of communism is. So again, for the ideas of communism is basically saying that the working class people, the proletariats, need to be in charge of all businesses and not the bourgeoisie. And bourgeoisie are basically like your rich folks that are the ones that run businesses. So it's like, hey, it should be the workers in charge of the business and not like these rich people, these bourgeoisie folks. So that's kind of what is also in Mao's Little Red Book as well. And Mao's Little Red Book becomes pretty popular starting off in kind of the 1960s. It starts to become pretty popular, and yet you see a lot of people kind of carrying around the book. You can see in this picture right here, this is a propaganda picture. You can see how this person in the picture has one of Mao's Little Red Books. As this right here is just kind of some other information that's in Mao's Little Red Book. It's talking about how, fighting is bad, but you have to do so to defend yourself. It talks about, modernization, the type of principles that's built on diligence, hard work. It talks about how a communist must be selfless and have the interests of people at heart. So, you gotta be selfless, have interests of everybody at heart. It talks about equality for sexes as well. So that's all in Mao's Little Red Book. Now, in the 1960s, this leads us into the Cultural Revolution, which is Mao's response to the fact that people didn't think that he knew what he was doing. Make a 1 and write down Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1969. So Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1969. So what ends up happening is that during the Cultural Revolution, what ends up happening in the Cultural Revolution is Mao's response to the fact that people didn't think he knew what he was doing. There started to be people in government who are like, no, Mao doesn't know what he's doing. We need to get him out and get a new leader in. And so I thought that was kind of going through a lot of people. And Mao Zedong was like, nope, I'm staying in charge. And so what he does is that he organizes this Cultural Revolution. Basically, he calls on young people to gather up and to overthrow people that are in government positions that want Mao Zedong kicked out of power. So it's basically saying that, hey, you see that person over there? He doesn't believe that Mao Zedong's doing a good job. You know why he doesn't think Mao Zedong's doing a good job? Because he's a bourgeoisie. He's secretly one of those folks, one of these like rich folks that wants to overthrow the party and overthrow China and make it back into a capitalist nation. So that's basically what Mao Zedong was saying. Go ahead and make a 2. We're going to write down Red Guards consisting of young people. So Red Guards consisting of young people. So the Red Guards were these people here. You can see him in the picture there. That's a Red Guard. He has a red armband on his arm. That red armband allows you to travel for free by train in China. So the red armband allows you to travel by free in China. You can also see there in the propaganda picture how he is smashing stuff. The things he are smashing in the picture are religious idols. So you can see how there's a religious idol right here. So that's one of the things that he's smashing. He's also smashing things like record players from the United States, for example. So basically, the Red Guards were told to destroy anything that was kind of like an outside influence on China. The United States, like music, for example, or any music that wasn't from China, religion, so Buddhism, for example. So all these kind of happened during the Cultural Revolution. So it's basically a big push by Mao Zedong to kick people out of power who didn't believe he was doing a good job and to get China back to being Chinese. All right. So not having people being like, oh, you know what? This music from the United States is pretty cool. It's like, no, it's not cool. All right. So that's basically his kind of opinion about it. You know, trying to keep out outside influences. Make it 3. Older alleged reactionaries removed from positions of power. So 3 older alleged reactionaries removed from positions of power. So the older reactionaries, basically, that was people who didn't think Mao Zedong was doing a good job. He got the Red Guards to basically kick him out of power. And then to replace those people with themselves. So what do you do with all these Red Guard people when the Cultural Revolution ends? So Cultural Revolution ends in 1969 after 3 years. What these Red Guards people end up doing? Well, what they end up doing is they send all these people to farms because they didn't know what else to do with them. They're like, well, we have all these people that are like Red Guards, but we don't know what to do with them. So you know what a young person wants to do? They want to be a farmer. So they send all these young people to farms and have them try to farm, which doesn't go well because a lot of these young people end up hitting those farms and end up kind of leaving and going back to like the cities where they're originally from. But that's the Cultural Revolution, and that's it for our notes for today.